Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call tonight's regular council meeting to order. Recommendation that the regular meeting be suspended and the committee of the whole meeting be convened. Moved by Councillor Randhawa, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. I'd like to call tonight's committee of the whole meeting to order. Recommendation that the agenda for the committee of the whole meeting of April 23rd, 2018 be adopted as circulated. Moved by Councillor Niche, seconded by Councillor Moreau. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Seeing as we have no agenda here for this, but members of the audience are able to come forward and speak to council on any topics that they wish. So if anybody from the member of the audience has anything they'd like to come talk to council about in an informal setting, they can come forward here and speak to us today. Okay, seeing as no members of the audience would like to come forward, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting and to convene the regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, item 2, recommendation that the agenda for the regular council meeting of April 23rd, 2018 be adopted with the additional agenda item 6B, report from the Chief Financial Officer regarding the RCMP Cell Block Improvement Project Award, 7A, letter from the North Coast Immigration and Multicultural Services Society regarding the discontinuation of the ESL program by NWCC. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Randhawa. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Item 3A, recommendation of the minutes of the special council meeting of April 9th, 2018 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Cunningham. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Item 3B, recommendation that the minutes of the regular council meeting of April 9th, 2018 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And item 3C, recommendation that the minutes of the special regular council meeting of April 19th, 2018 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Randhawa, seconded by Councillor Moreau. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. The minutes are an entertaining item for us tonight. Okay, moving up, we have a petition and delegation report from the Small Business Advisory Committee regarding the Small Business Development Action Plan. And thank you for members of the business community to attend tonight to watch the presentation, as I know you all worked very hard to make these policies.
All right, well, thanks everyone for having us. I would just like to recognize we do have 3 committee members in the audience tonight. This has been about just a year's plus worth of work that we're here to present on. Basically, what we've called this is a Small Business Development Action Plan, and it's been prepared for you by the Small Business Advisory Committee. So just a brief timeline to refresh your memory. After a few months of kind of finagling over the terms of reference in April of 2016, terms of reference were adopted for the committee itself. We had a few months of delay in getting committee members appointed just because we wanted to ensure the diversity across different sectors of the economy and different areas of town. So on January 9th, we appointed Charmaine Carlson, Irene Mills, Mark Page, James Warburton, Brian Musgrave, Craig Uthette, and 1 member of the Chamber of Commerce Executive. After a few months of orientation and a few kind of welcome workshops and things like that, by April 4th of 2017, we had completed Business Walk survey, which was coordinated by Paul Venditelli here from the Economic Development Office, and 100 businesses were surveyed there, which was the 2nd year, and that's helped to inform some of the recommendations here tonight. And then by the end of 2017, after a series of monthly meetings, discussions, and analysis, the first draft of these recommendations were workshopped with senior city staff just to talk about feasibility and things like that. And then we're here tonight to present the final draft. So what the committee's done in the last about 15 months or so is we've used the terms of reference to kind of guide the discussion that we've had. So we've reviewed the city's existing policies, plans, bylaws, and projects as they relate to small business development. You'll see we've developed a template for what a new business welcome and marketing package could look like. participated in the Business Walk program, and we've developed a fairly substantial list of options for Council's consideration regarding downtown renewal. And the basic request tonight, the recommendation is that Council will receive this report for information purposes and refer the action plan to a Council workshop before the end of May, just as a way to preempt the summer break. So with that, I just hop right into to the content here. I've got about 20 slides, and I'm going to try to do this as quick as possible. So, the action plan summary, there's basically 3 goals, each with their own objectives. So the overarching goal of the Small Business Action Plan is to ease the tax burden on small business, encourage growth, and reduce restriction. And you can see there's different sub-objectives for each, which I'll just go through now. So I'm not sure I need to spend too much time on building the rationale for why the committee is asking or has the goal of easing the tax burden. It's been talked about for a long time. Prince Rupert has some of the highest tax rates on commercial ratepayers in the entire province of BC. You can see we're actually the far right of this graph. The only jurisdiction with higher commercial tax rates than Prince Rupert is Grand Isle. So objective 1A in how to ease the tax burden is to first ensure tax equity. The basic outcome that the committee wants to see is a rebalancing of the 3 major taxation classes, namely residential, small business, and industry, to make sure that commercial ratepayers are not required to indirectly subsidize major industrial ratepayers, neighboring communities, or new developments. The first 2 pieces we know quite well. Essentially what the committee is asking for is for us to continue advocating to the provincial government to restore the sunset provision of the Port Property Tax Act. But the one key difference that the committee has than the city's current stance is there was discussion around how the legislation has been effective at incentivizing port investment. It's obviously achieved its goal, but it has had unintended consequences. So alternatively, that the city would lobby the provincial government to increase the competitiveness tax grant to account for the depreciation of those port assets. The second piece, which has been talked about in the public quite recently, was renegotiating a fair Ridley Island tax sharing agreement with the District of Port Ed. And what the committee is asking for here, as well as a shared service agreement, is part of that discussion so that there is certainty between neighbors on what exactly the expectations are so that we don't have to keep on getting into these concerns. And then the last piece of ensuring tax equity is the institution of development cost charges. There's a detailed appendix attached to here on kind of the values that the committee wants to see reflected in any DCCs to basically ensure that existing ratepayers are not required to subsidize the cost of the installation of new infrastructure. So the second piece to easing the tax burden is increasing the tax assessment base. The basic theory here is that if you're able to grow the tax assessment base, you'll spread that tax burden across more ratepayers by growing the total assessed values of property throughout the city. So you can see in that chart there the vast majority of growth since 2005 in Prince Rupert, this is from the 5-year financial plan, has been in the residential sector. So the action items that the committee is asking for here is for us to continue working on restoring Watson Island back to the tax roll by funding the remediation of the site through long-term leases, preparing a Crown grant application to acquire provincial land for the purpose of expanding the industrial park, identifying and preparing investment packages for the development of new industrial lands, identifying and preparing investment packages for municipal land holdings with the potential for lease or sale, and prioritizing the sale of municipally owned single-family lots to individuals willing to include authorized secondary suites. And the last piece in easing the tax burden is sourcing alternative revenues. You can see from that chart, I mean, the city of Prince Rupert relies heavily on general taxation for revenue. And so the outcome that the committee wants to see here is more stable and consistent municipal annual revenues from sources other than property taxes to help mitigate the pattern of annual tax increases. So some of the action items with that objective is for the city to continue negotiating with the provincial government through the Northwest Resource Benefits Alliance, leasing appropriately zoned municipal industrial lands through Legacy Inc. with strong preference to Watson Island, working with public and private partners to create a Wantage Road bypass highway and industrial logistics area, creating a naming rights policy to solicit bids for exclusive rights on civic facilities with funds dedicated to capital costs, investigating opportunities to raise additional advertising revenues at civic facilities, and hiring a grant writer as the world becomes increasingly proposal-based. And so that, in a nutshell, is the first objective of easing the tax burden on small business in Prince Rupert. The second goal is encouraging growth. It's no secret, you look up and down 3rd Avenue, the number of vacant storefronts are an obvious symptom to a much bigger problem that's not just unique to Prince Rupert, but the general shift in the retail economy to online and big box stores. That's not to say, though, that there's things that the city can't do to help. So the first objective that the committee has set for to recommend to the city is to help recruit and retain skilled labor. You'll see just a snapshot from the most recent small business survey. By a factor of about 3 to 1, staffing and training was viewed as the single biggest challenge in Prince Rupert. It's the availability of staff and training and skilled labor. So some of the action items that the committee is recommending to the city is to partner with Community Futures on business retention and expansion initiatives, to encourage cluster development, to meet with top employers to discuss collaboration on recruitment and retention, conduct a business mapping exercise to identify all active business licenses in their respective locations, and then, as council had requested, to develop a marketing and welcoming package. What the committee has basically asked for, they've again attached a detailed appendix on what they feel should be included. It was very important that we'd have a hand-signed letter from the mayor as an endorsement and welcome, community investment profile with demographic and market information, development procedures, city hall services, zoning map, utility information, and resource directory. The second objective in encouraging growth is retaining local wealth. It's a stat that's probably well known that if you shop locally, of every $100 you spend, about $68 of that will recirculate in the economy, compared to only about $14 spending at any big box chains. So almost 5 times the impact in shopping locally. So the objective here is essentially to ensure that as much of the economic activity that's generated within Prince Rupert actually stays in Prince Rupert. Online shopping, big box stores, and out-of-town competition were all consistently identified as another concern of small business in Prince Rupert. So a few different action items that are being recommended here is for the city to support programs that encourage spending at locally owned businesses such as Love Prince Rupert, developing a policy to incentivize businesses that are based on models of cooperative ownership, supporting a business energy retrofit program to assist with the high capital costs of energy efficiency upgrades, and investigating social procurement as a means to maximize the social and environmental benefits in awarding contracts. And the last objective, I'll spend just a little bit more of my focus on this one because I know it's something that council had asked for specifically, is some options regarding downtown renewal and downtown revitalization. In any city, the downtown is a reflection of how people perceive a city. And you look up and down 3rd Avenue, and it's hard not to see the vacant storefronts, the deteriorated buildings, and some of these empty lots. But a revitalized downtown has the potential to renew local interest in spending time and money at local businesses. It can diversify our economy, and it can beautify the downtown core. We can celebrate our culture and identity. We can increase property values. We can create jobs. We can reduce urban sprawl and promote walkability, just to name a few of the benefits of revitalizing downtown. So some of the action items that the committee is recommending is for the city to introduce a discount or a reduction on development cost charges for any new development that rehabilitates a deteriorated building or builds on a vacant lot in the downtown and Cow Bay. Continue to make grants available for facade improvements and publicize the guidelines. Engage in design and planning initiatives to guide infrastructure improvements. Meet with downtown business owners to discuss the creation of a downtown business improvement area. And as council had requested again, that the Small Business Walks program has proven to be very successful, going from, I believe it was 50 surveys year 1 to 100 surveys year 2. It's been a really helpful exercise that the committee is endorsing to continue. But kind of the 2 key pieces that the committee is recommending as an option for downtown renewal, first is the reestablishment of the property tax revitalization bylaw. This used to exist on the books in Prince Rupert. I think it was in 2011. Essentially, the city has the ability to exempt certain buildings in the downtown core, setting an objective to exempt from taxes if they meet certain objectives, such as building on a vacant lot, rehabilitating a deteriorated building, or doing something with the brownfield site. So what the committee is asking for is to reestablish that bylaw with a minimum 5-year exemption period that would achieve some of those objectives. The second kind of key piece is none of this can really be done in isolation. It all has to be done as part of a larger strategy. So the committee is asking the city to create a downtown revitalization action plan with particular consideration for encouraging residential infill through zoning, the basic premise of getting more people living downtown, more eyes on the street, plenty of data out there that proves that downtown is safer with less crime and less vandalism. Encouraging ground floor retail and service activities, obviously with residential on higher floors. Transforming the area adjacent to City Hall into a public square. This is one of the recommendations of the planning partnership. Investigate closing 3rd Avenue in front of City Hall for events. Investigating roundabouts at McBride and Five Corners to celebrate the Breton Hall plan. So that, in a nutshell, is all of the options that the committee has for the city in terms of downtown revitalization. And the last section here, the goal of reducing restriction. Even if it's just a perception, there is a perception out there that some of the city's regulations can be burdensome, costly, and time-consuming. And the fact of the matter is there's a lot of bylaws still on the books that haven't been updated in quite some time. So the outcome that the committee is asking for, basically the first objective is to modernize some of the city's bylaws. Obviously with the outcome of creating a simple and clear regulatory framework for small business that's simple, straightforward, and easy to understand. So kind of the key piece of modernizing the bylaws is what guides our long-term decision making, which is the official community plan. The original document was drafted in 2007, and there wasn't really much consideration at the time for any major projects, LNG, propane export, and all of those things. So that's kind of the key piece that a lot of this can be rolled into is an update of the official community plan. Some that were singled out as being important to update are the fee setting and fee charge bylaws, regular review of the amendment and permit procedure, business license bylaw. There was an idea that the committee was quite excited about. It was either having a 10-year or a lifetime business license program so that it's not an annual renewal. If you know you're going to be in business for a long time, you get essentially an upfront discount for paying upfront. Reviewing signage regulations in the downtown and Cow Bay permit areas, and strengthening the property maintenance bylaw. And then last but not least, reviewing all bylaws to repeal anything that's out of date, maybe has become obsolete, and modernize where necessary. And then singling out parking. This was consistently identified as the second most pressing issue in both Small Business Walk's surveys. The obvious objective here is to ease the parking shortage in the downtown in Cow Bay. So some of the action items that were endorsed by the committee were for the city to investigate changes to the cash in lieu parking policy. Essentially right now, any business is able to pay a $200 fee for not being able to provide parking, with the theory that ultimately the city would use that fund to build new parking. Obviously there needs to be some change there to address the shortage that we're facing. Investigating converting downtown side streets and 3rd Avenue to angled parking in order to create additional space. Examining the metering of high traffic areas and an overall decrease in posted parking time limits. Meeting with major employers in the downtown core to encourage alternate modes of transportation. And examining the creation of building alternative parking spaces in high traffic areas. And so to finish off the last piece, the committee is asking for the city to have a focus on fostering a culture of customer service excellence. Over time, customer expectations with technological advances and changing demographics, it's prudent for any organization to review their customer service delivery. And so what the committee is asking the city to do is review best practices in the municipal sector relating to customer service, solicit public feedback to determine current satisfaction levels with customer service, conduct an internal review of standards and process documentation, investigate a business ambassador program to create a single point of contact, make available a pre-application meeting with applicants to provide greater understanding of process and timelines, and improve online access to information to facilitate the ease of doing business. And so that, in a nutshell, is the committee's suite of recommendations that they've got here for council. Again, the recommendation that, or the motion that the committee is hoping for is that council will receive this report for information purposes and refer the action plan to a council workshop before the end of May. So with that, is there any questions?
I just want to say great job to you guys and the committee for these recommendations. I really, in particular, like how you've taken a lot of the initiatives that are underway and really made it coherent into fitting them into a plan like this. I think it's a brilliant job done. There's lots to say. I don't necessarily want to comment too much tonight about the individual policies. I think it's correct in saying that council should do a workshop on something like this because it's a very heavy policy book. But I do want to say I love the direction it's heading. I think the work that's been done here is fantastic. And I'll hand it over to councillors for some questions.
Having said it on some of the meetings, I want to say I have never met a group of people that wanted to work together in a cohesive unit and get a change to this city, which I think the city needs. And I really admire the group for putting the time and effort in they did to do it. You know, they want some changes made. We need some changes made, and this is a fantastic start. And I think it's something we have to continue in the future with small business and other groups in the city so we can actually get people together and start caring and start doing something about it. Thank you very much.
Great job, and look forward to the workshop to see what we can do to make things better.
Any further comments from council? Okay, hearing none, I want to thank you for your time again, and there'll be more discussion once this is brought back for a resolution. So really appreciate it, and thanks again to the committee. You guys did a great job on this, and also to say it's great to see the city, the chamber, and community futures and business leaders in the community all coming together to work towards, and also to acknowledge some of the problems that the community is facing in terms of some, like for example, the Port Property Tax Act and the Ridley Island Tax Sharing Agreement. These are big financial pressures for the city, and to acknowledge that through this is actually very helpful for us as well. So, so thank you for that. So we'll adjourn this presentation for now, and we'll have a more discussion on it further. Thank you.
Well, yeah, so just the hope would be that you'd pass the motion to
Oh, yes.
receive for
The
information
motion
and
as
then
well.
refer to workshop, yeah.
So the recommendations that council receive this information, and council refer this information to a future council workshop before the end of May. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Anish. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Mr. Mandrick, I'm just realizing I don't have my statement of the chair for the next resolution. Do you have that on you? Thank you. Perfect. Okay, so next up. Now, just because this is a new process for us, am I saying this before we do present this? Yes. Okay. Okay, so next up we have an application for the development variance permits at 228 8th Avenue East, and we have updated some of our procedure bylaw, and so now we're actually giving the public an opportunity to comment on development variances. So this is the first time that we've done this. So members of the public are able to come and speak to these variances now, which wasn't the case before in the past. So I have a brief statement to say before we invite people to come. So this is at 228 8th Avenue East. So the intent of the development variance permit at 228 8th Avenue East is to construct a two-story addition to an existing residence that is currently sited in a non-conformance to setback standards. The purpose of the addition is to increase storage and living space. Every person present who believes that their interest is affected by the proposed development application is hereby given an opportunity to come forward at this time and present themselves at the table and speak into the microphone. So with that being said, if anybody wants to speak to this variance in particular, can come forward and speak into the microphone. And seeing as no one's coming forward, we will continue on with the presentation. Thank you.
Continuing, Mr. Mayor, from what you said with regards to this development variance permit request being at 228 8th Avenue East is for the purpose of constructing a two-story addition. The application is to vary Section 5.2.4 of the Prince Rupert zoning bylaw to decrease the minimum allowable rear yard setback from 3 to 1.75 meters. The existing residence is in non-conforming to rear yard setback standards because of the siting of the residence, which is towards 8th Avenue East. And as shown in the slide, moreover, the east property boundary was originally curved but is now squared. As a result, what was once the side yard prior to the 1990s is now the rear yard. The 72 square meter two-story addition is proposed on the east side of the residence of this mixed single and two-story residential neighborhood, which poses little visual or sunlight obstruction to the surrounding residences, except for some visual obstruction to the neighbor to the south, as is demonstrated in this slide here. This is the southerly direction. Staff issued notification of the proposed variance to the neighboring properties within a 50-meter radius. While staff received several inquiries, no comments were received from affected parties as of today's date. In conclusion, we did not receive any objections that would prevent approval of this application for variance. Do you have any questions?
Questions for council? Okay, recommendation that the development variance permit application number DP 1803 for 228 8th Avenue East proceed for final consideration. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Nish. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Next up, report from our Chief Financial Officer regarding the RCMP cell block improvement project.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In 2017, staff were directed to begin the process of having the RCMP cell block improvements made, given the city is responsible for the facility. A tender was prepared to achieve the modifications necessary to bring the cells back to compliance, and one bid was received in the amount of $456,800 plus GST. The tendered amount is within budget. However, depending on the cost of any change orders, should they be necessary, an amendment to the city's financial plan may be required. The estimated start date is mid-May, with work to be complete in 10 weeks. Council is requested to approve the award of the RCMP cell block upgrades project to the sole bidder, Marcan Construction Limited.
Okay, so the recommendation that Mayor and Council award the RCMP cell block upgrades project to Marcan Construction Limited. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Nish. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Next up, we have a correspondence for action. We have a letter from the North Coast Immigrant and Multicultural Service Society regarding the discontinuation of the ESL program by NWCC. I thought maybe Councillor Renhow, would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm representing a city on North Coast Immigration Multicultural, and they approached me like college is discontinuing ESL classes, and everybody fear like we can have no new immigrants move to Rupert because they want to upgrade their English. So I think that's very important for our community, and they want a supporting letter to continue this ESL classes here.
Great, thank you.
So I make a motion to.
So, Councillor Renauer makes a motion that Council directs staff to draft a letter requesting that the Northwest Community College reconsider their decision regarding the discontinuation of the ESL program offered by NWCC. Second by Councillor Cunningham. Discussion? Councillor Cunningham?
Yeah, I think we should send more than just a letter to the Northwest Community College. I think we should send one to our MLA, to the Minister of Education about this. This is ridiculous. It's hard enough for somebody first coming to our country that is coming to a new town and a new culture and a new everything else and having trouble with communication. This is essential to any community that has a service industry of any type. And, you know, these people traditionally start out at the lower service jobs and work their way up. And, you know, without a chance to learn the language, what chance do they have to get a job, contribute to the community, or anything else? I think it's very important that this decision's changed and changed rapidly. You know, like, it's been a great program. I've talked to people that have taught it, gone through it, and it's even though it might not have large numbers, it has a large impact on the community if it's not there. So I really think it's something we should pursue as a city council. Thank you.
If it's,
Your
oh,
worship?
yeah,
At one time, the city of Prince Rupert had people through the Northwest Community College that were able to teach English as a second language as well as literacy. Two separate courses, but with the same instructors. And I find it very hard to believe that that we can't get some kind of a contribution towards an ESL teacher. We don't have as many immigrants to our community now as we did at one time. We certainly had large numbers in the 80s and 90s. But, you know, we should look forward to getting a large number of immigrants into our community again when we start, you know, increasing in the port activity. So I really think that it's important that we at least get somebody who can work at least part-time in that field to help the handful of people we have in town now that need English as a second language help, and also to keep our foot in the door. So if we start getting more people that will be aware of a need of an increase in service.
that's good to say. If it's okay with the mover and seconder for a friendly amendment, that we would CC the MLA, and I would just say the ministers are responsible, because I believe advanced ed is also, I would say, more probably relevant. Yeah? Okay. So any other discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. Thank you. Okay, next up, yeah, thank you, Councillor Randhawa. Next up, we had much discussion already about this, so recommendation that council gives final consideration and adopts the 2018 5-year financial plan bylaw number 3426-2018, subject to approval of first, second, and third readings from council's April 19th, 2018 special regular meeting. Moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Moreau. Discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And item B, 9B, recommendation that council gives final consideration, adopts the 2018 property tax bylaw number 3427-2018, subject to approval of first, second, and third readings from the April 19th, 2018 special regular meeting. Moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Moreau. Discussion?
Maybe you should just explain to the public what that bylaw says.
While we're recommending a tax freeze for this year, so a 0% tax increase, so no tax increase whatsoever.
Unless somebody's property has gone up above the median, right?
That's correct. So the majority of people's taxes will remain the same or go down.
Right. Thanks.
Councillor Randhawa?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think this is great news for our community. No tax increase, because we already saw the slide, one of the top ones. And with the new investments like Erla Gas and Pembina, I hope with the new revenues we can freeze our utilities taxes too, because we still going utilities 3% every year, and also we can freeze on our recreation fees in future. So I will support in this motion.
Great. And there'll be much further elaboration on our financial opportunities at the town hall on Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock. We'll be going much more into detail about how things are looking, but this is great news for now that this year we're able to be in a position to do this. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, reports from council. Councillor Cunningham.
Just two small things. What we have a house that's actually in Councillor Nice's neighborhood that's been, they're paying the taxes, but no one's lived in it for approximately 15-20 years. It's starting to go into disrepair, and the lot itself doesn't look pretty nice. Is there any action the city can take, even though like the taxes are being paid every year, but the house isn't being kept up?
Mr. Long, do you have any comments on that?
Well, we have an unsightly premises bylaw, so if it's not being kept up, we can we can use that bylaw to deal with the unseatliness.
And the other thing is, people have come to me about Crestview parking. And I actually drove around Crestview in a circle there, and there's getting to be, and it's not unique to Crestview, it's throughout the city, but because Crestview itself is kind of narrow, and it has bus service there now, people parking boats and trailers and that there, it's getting more and more difficult for people to go around. I don't know if we could talk to engineering about making it a one-way or something so there's more parking or something like that, but it might be something to look at because it's getting worse and worse up on that one particular street.
Perhaps we can get operations to look into. Okay. Other reports from council? Okay, just want to remind folks that this Wednesday we're having a big community presentation. It's going to go through a lot of content on the community, where we are now, where we're going for the next 20 years. We have infrastructure timelines. We're going to be presenting revenue challenges and solutions, touching a lot on what Councillor Moreau and the committee have brought forward today. You're touching on a lot of the themes that are within the problems of the community, but also a vision for the community and where we're going. And so it'd be great to have the community come out and be able to hear that, because it's difficult to explain that from this chair, as well as to type it up on Facebook. At this point, I think we could write a book about this town. So there's a lot of content. So it'd be great to have the community come here firsthand. And I believe that it's going to be recorded and hopefully posted up online or put on Channel 10 at some point. So we're going to try to get those details confirmed. However, it'd be great to have you there. And we'll also, in the foyer, we're going to have the presentation of the downtown designs. So there'll be the 17-foot printout of the downtown design plan, as well as the waterfronts plan. There'll be different pieces of information around Watson Island there, a bunch of poster boards, and we'll have some videos that you can look in the foyer. There'll be tables there. I believe the North Coast Innovation Lab will be there for information, as well as Canadian Trails, I believe, will be there, and City West to talk about some of their undersea cable project. So there'll be a lot of stuff to do in the foyer as well. So 7 o'clock it starts. Presentation will most likely begin around 7:15. And then there will be questions from the public at the end of the presentation. So just want to remind folks that are listening and as well here today that you're invited to come, and it'd be great to see you guys on Wednesday evening. With that being said, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everyone.